The rain hammered down on the interstate like bullets from heaven, each drop exploding against the asphalt in tiny bursts of fury. I stood there in the darkness, 87 miles from home, watching my wife's BMW disappear into the night. The red taillights faded to nothing, leaving me alone with the storm and my thoughts. "You needed a lesson, Cedric," Alma had sneered just minutes before, her perfectly manicured finger pointing at me like a weapon. "Maybe now you'll understand your place." Miles Roark, her business partner and lover, had laughed from the driver's seat. Even my own daughter Daisy had giggled from the back, her phone already out to document my humiliation for her social media followers. The three of them had driven me out here, taken my phone, my wallet, everything except the clothes on my back. They thought they'd won. They thought this was checkmate. I didn't run after them. I didn't scream or beg. Instead, I memorized the license plate, noted the time on the gas station clock across the road, and stepped deliberately under the security camera mounted on the light pole. Then I smiled. Her cruelty had just ended. This was her last mistake. The sound of tires on wet pavement made me turn. A black pickup truck slid to a stop beside me, its engine purring like a satisfied cat. The passenger window rolled down, revealing Rico's weathered face. My head of security looked as calm as ever, like picking up his boss on a rain-soaked highway at midnight was just another Tuesday. "Ready, boss?" Rico asked, extending a burner phone and a manila folder through the window. I took both items, feeling the weight of what was about to begin. "Oh yeah, Rico. Let's begin." The truck's interior was warm and dry. Rico pulled back onto the highway without another word. He'd worked for me for 5 years, ever since I'd started my security consulting business. Ex-military, quiet, efficient, and absolutely loyal. While Alma had been climbing the corporate ladder at her law firm, Rico had been helping me build something real. I opened the folder. Inside were photographs, bank statements, hotel receipts, and a detailed timeline of my wife's affair. Rico had been busy. "How long have you known?" I asked. 3 months. Waited for your signal." 3 months. While I'd been playing the oblivious husband, Rico had been documenting every lie, every secret meeting, every betrayal. The evidence was overwhelming. Alma thought she was clever, but she'd underestimated the man she married. My phone, the burner Rico had given me, buzzed with a text. It was from my lawyer. "Cards canceled, accounts frozen, gate codes changed. Welcome home." Pinegate had been our home for 8 years. A once prosperous suburb that had seen better days, it was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Big houses with small secrets, strip malls with surveillance cameras, and neighbors who loved to gossip. Perfect for what I had planned. "She'll be home in about an hour," Rico said, glancing at his watch. "Should be interesting." I leaned back in the passenger seat, watching the rain streak across the windshield. Alma Fallon, successful corporate attorney, thought she could discard me like yesterday's newspaper. She'd forgotten that I wasn't just some blue-collar nobody she'd married in a moment of weakness. I'd built my security business from nothing, learned to read people, to anticipate their moves. I'd been an amateur boxer once, and the first rule of boxing was simple: let them swing first, then counter when they're off balance. Alma had just thrown her best punch. Now it was my turn. The truck pulled into my driveway at 12:47 a.m. The house looked different somehow, like it was waiting for something. Rico walked me to the front door, his hand resting casually on something under his jacket. Old habits from his military days. "She's going to be furious," I said, punching in the new security code. That's the point, isn't it? Inside, the house felt like a tomb. Alma's presence was everywhere, her expensive artwork, her law books, her perfectly arranged furniture. But it was my house now. My name on the deed, my money in the mortgage, my rules. I went to my study and pulled out the laptop I kept hidden in my safe. While Alma had been playing games, I'd been preparing for war. Bank accounts, credit cards, insurance policies. Everything had been quietly transferred or canceled over the past week. The beauty of being married to a lawyer was learning how the system worked. The downside for her was that I'd learned it too. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from our home security system. A car had just pulled into the driveway. Alma was home. I watched through the window as she got out of Miles' BMW, her heels clicking on the wet pavement. She walked to the front door like she owned the place, key in hand. I heard her try the lock, heard the frustrated grunt when it wouldn't turn. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for, her fist pounding on the door. "Cedric, open this door right now!" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I took my time walking to the foyer. Through the peephole, I could see her face twisted with rage. Miles stood behind her, looking nervous. Good. He should be nervous. "Can I help you?" I asked through the door. "Don't play games with me, Cedric. Open the door." "I'm sorry, who is this? I don't recognize your voice." The pounding got louder. "This is my house." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone and activating the video recording, "this is my house. You're trespassing. I have it on camera." Through the window, I could see neighbors starting to turn on their lights. Mrs. Patterson from next door was already at her window with her phone out. Perfect. "You can't lock me out of my own home." "Watch me." I heard Miles whispering something to her, probably telling her to calm down. But Alma had never been good at backing down from a fight. It was one of the things I'd once loved about her. "My car won't start," she yelled. "What did you do?" "I canceled the insurance. Wouldn't want you driving an uninsured vehicle. That's illegal." The silence that followed was beautiful. I could practically hear the gears turning in her lawyer brain, trying to figure out her next move. But I'd already thought 3 steps ahead. "You're making a mistake, Cedric." "The only mistake I made was trusting you." More neighbors were coming out now. The Hendersons, the Johnsons, even old Mr. Kramer with his ancient video camera. Alma's public humiliation was being documented from every angle. "This isn't over," she said finally. "No," I agreed. "It's just beginning." I watched through the peephole as she and Miles walked back to his car, her shoulders rigid with fury. She'd call her lawyer in the morning, maybe try to get an emergency court order. But I'd already filed the necessary paperwork. Everything I'd done was perfectly legal. As Miles's BMW pulled out of the driveway, I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and fresh. Mrs. Patterson waved at me from her window. "Everything all right, Cedric?" she called out. "Just fine, Mrs. Patterson, just fine." Rico emerged from the shadows beside my garage. "Phase 1 complete?" "Phase 1 complete. Time for Phase 2. I looked up at the clearing sky, where stars were beginning to peek through the clouds. Somewhere out there, Alma was probably crying or screaming or plotting her revenge. She'd always been good at playing the victim when things didn't go her way. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't going to roll over and take it. This time, I was going to show her what happened when you pushed Cedric Fallon too far. The game had begun. The next morning brought sunshine and gossip in equal measure. I sat on my front porch with a cup of coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. Mrs. Patterson had already been by with fresh muffins and a dozen questions. The Hendersons had slowed their morning jog to a crawl as they passed my house. Even the mailman lingered longer than usual. Pinegate loved a good scandal, and I'd just given them the best one in years. My phone rang, the regular one this time. Alma's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then another, then another. By the time I finished my coffee, she'd left 7 messages. I didn't need to listen to them to know what they said. Threats, demands, promises of legal action. The same old Alma playbook. Rico's truck pulled into the driveway at exactly 9 a.m., punctual as always. "Morning, boss," Sleep well? Like a baby, you? Busy night. Got some interesting footage from the hotel security cameras. He handed me a flash drive. Miles and your wife, 3 different nights last week. High definition, time-stamped, legally obtained. I pocketed the drive. Send copies to her law partners. Anonymous email, untraceable. Already done. That was Rico. Always one step ahead. We drove through Pine Gate in comfortable silence. The town looked different in daylight, tired, worn down, like an old boxer who'd taken too many hits. Strip malls with half-empty parking lots, houses that needed paint, yards that needed care. It was the kind of place where people minded their own business until something interesting happened. Today, I was the most interesting thing in town. Our first stop was Murphy's boxing gym, a rundown building that smelled like sweat and dreams. I'd been coming here since high school, back when I thought I might make something of myself in the ring. Now it was just therapy. Cedric, old Murphy himself, waved me over to the heavy bag. Heard you had some excitement last night. News travels fast. Faster than usual when it involves Alma Fallon. Murphy's grin was missing several teeth. That woman's got a reputation around here. I started wrapping my hands. What kind of reputation? The kind that makes people cross the street when they see her coming. Too good for the rest of us, you know, always acting like she's better than Pine Gate. The heavy bag felt good under my fists. Each punch was a release, a small explosion of anger and frustration. Murphy watched me work, nodding approvingly. You got good form, but you're holding back. Let it out, son. So I did. I thought about Alma's sneer in the rain, about Miles's laughter, about Daisy's betrayal. Each memory fueled another combination, another flurry of punches that made the bag dance on its chain. That's it, Murphy said. That's what I'm talking about. You remember what I taught you about fighting? Let them swing first, then counter when they're off balance. And the best revenge is making them beat themselves. Murphy's grin widened. Smart boy. Your wife's been swinging wild for months. Time to show her what a real counterpunch looks like. We left the gym around noon and headed to Rosie's Roadhouse, the kind of place where everyone knew your business before you did. The lunch crowd was already gossiping about the previous night's drama. I could feel their eyes on me as we walked in, hear the whispers that stopped when I got too close. Cedric Fallon, called out Janet Morrison from her usual booth. Heard you had some visitors last night. Just some lost tourists, I said, sliding into a seat at the bar. Nothing interesting. But Janet wasn't buying it. Tourists in a BMW at midnight during a rainstorm? The whole bar was listening now. This was better than reality TV. You know how it is, Janet. People get confused in the dark. Rico ordered a beer and kept his mouth shut. He was good at reading a room, knew when to let me handle things my way. Speaking of confused, said Tommy Henderson from across the bar. Saw your wife's car getting towed this morning. Repo man said the insurance was canceled. Paperwork mix-up, I said. You know how insurance companies are. But the seed was planted. By tonight, everyone in Pine Gate would know that Alma Fallon's car had been repossessed. By tomorrow, they'd be speculating about why. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. A. I showed it to Rico, who just shrugged. Want me to trace it? Nah, let her sweat. The phone buzzed again. This is childish. Then again, you're embarrassing, Daisy. And again, I'm coming over. I finished my beer and left a 20 on the bar. Rico, I think it's time we paid Miles a visit. Miles Roark lived in Pine Gate Heights, the newer development where all the young professionals bought their starter mansions. His condo was on the 3rd floor of a building designed to look expensive, but built cheap. The kind of place that impressed people who didn't know better. We found his BMW in the parking garage, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Rico produced a small toolkit from his jacket. What are you thinking? I asked. Nothing permanent, just inconvenient. While Rico worked on the car, I planted a small device under the bumper. GPS tracker, completely legal as long as I didn't use it to stalk anyone. I was just keeping tabs on my wife's boyfriend. Perfectly reasonable. Rico finished his work and stepped back to admire it. The car looked fine from a distance, but up close you could see the subtle sabotage. Sugar in the gas tank was a myth, but there were other ways to make a car unreliable. How long before it stops working? Few days, maybe a week. Depends on how much he drives. We were walking back to Rico's truck when my phone rang. Alma again. This time I answered. Hello? Don't hello me, you bastard. I know what you're doing. I'm having lunch with a friend. What are you doing? I'm getting a lawyer, a real lawyer, not some small-town hack. Good for you. I hope they take credit cards. The silence on the other end was delicious. Alma was just now realizing that all her credit cards had been canceled along with everything else. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just protecting my assets. I'm your wife. Are you? Because last night it seemed like you were someone else's entertainment. Another silence. Then, we need to talk. We are talking. In person, like adults. I looked at Rico, who was shaking his head. I don't think that's a good idea, Alma. You might leave me somewhere inconvenient again. I was angry. And now I'm angry. Funny how that works. I hung up before she could respond. The phone immediately started ringing again, but I turned it off. Let her wonder. Let her worry. Let her realize that the man she'd married wasn't as weak as she thought. Where to now, boss? Home. I want to be there when she shows up. The drive back to my house took us through the heart of Pine Gate, past the high school where Daisy was probably telling her friends about her crazy father, past the strip mall where Alma bought her expensive coffee, past the police station where I'd filed my incident report about being abandoned on the highway. Everything was connected in a small town. Every action had consequences that rippled outward like stones thrown in a pond. Alma thought she could control the narrative, but she'd forgotten that I'd lived here longer than she had. These were my people, my neighbors, my community. She was about to learn what that meant. Rico parked in my driveway just as another car pulled up to the curb. A silver sedan with tinted windows. Expensive, professional, intimidating. The kind of car lawyers drove when they wanted to make an impression. Looks like she found that attorney, Rico said. The car doors opened and 3 people got out. Alma, looking perfectly composed in her power suit. A tall man in an expensive coat who could only be her lawyer. And Ava Sterling, Alma's best friend and self-appointed fixer. Ava was the kind of woman who made problems disappear. PR manager, socialite, and professional manipulator. If Alma had brought her, things were about to get interesting. Cedric, Alma called out as I stepped onto my porch. We need to talk. I'm listening. Inside, privately. This is as private as it gets. You're not welcome in my house. The lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Fallon, I'm David Chen, representing your wife. What you're doing is illegal harassment. What I'm doing is protecting my property. You're trespassing. Ava moved closer, her smile sharp as a blade. Come on, Cedric. Don't be difficult. We're all adults here. I'd never liked Ava. She was the sort of person who gathered secrets like prizes, who spread quiet harm through whispers and labeled it friendship. Alma had fallen under her sway years earlier, and our marriage had been unraveling ever since. Adults don't abandon their spouses on dark highways, I said. That was a mistake, Alma said quickly. I was emotional. You were cruel. The neighbors were watching again. Mrs. Patterson had her phone out, probably live streaming the whole thing. Mr. Kramer was pretending to work in his garden while he listened to every word. Let's discuss this reasonably, the lawyer said. My client is willing to negotiate. Your client is welcome to negotiate through my attorney. His number is in the phone book. You don't have an attorney. Alma said. I smiled. I do now. That was when Rico's phone buzzed. He answered it, listened for a moment, then handed it to me. Mr. Fallon? This is Patricia Williams from Williams, Burke and Associates. I understand you need legal representation. Patricia Williams, the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state. I'd hired her that morning, right after Alma's first threatening voicemail. That's correct, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Excellent. I've reviewed the materials your associate provided, very thorough documentation. We'll be filing a response to any legal action by end of business today. I handed the phone back to Rico and looked at Alma's shocked face. Anything else you wanted to discuss? The lawyer whispered something to Alma, who shook her head angrily. Ava was texting furiously, probably calling in favors or spreading damage control. This isn't over, Alma said. No, I agreed. It's just getting started. They retreated to their car, but I could see them arguing through the windows. Alma was gesturing wildly, the lawyer was shaking his head, and Ava was making phone calls. Rico watched them drive away. Think they'll be back? Count on it. But next time, they won't catch us off guard. I went inside and poured myself a drink. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Patterson talking to the mailman, probably filling him in on everything he'd missed. By evening, the whole neighborhood would know that Alma Fallon had tried to intimidate her husband and failed. My phone rang. The burner this time. Yeah? Boss, it's Tommy. One of my employees, working surveillance on a client. Thought you should know. Your wife's friend just made some interesting phone calls. Ava? Yeah, she's planning something. Couldn't get details, but she mentioned social media and public opinion. I wasn't surprised. Ava's specialty was character assassination. She'd done it to business rivals, political opponents, anyone who got in her way. Now she was turning her attention to me. Keep monitoring. Let me know what you find out. Will do. And boss, for what it's worth, we're all on your side. That meant something. My employees were good people, loyal people. They'd seen how Alma treated me at company events, how she looked down on them like they were beneath her notice. I walked out onto my back deck and looked across the yard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere out there, Alma was plotting her next move. Ava was working her contacts, spreading whatever story would make me look like the villain. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They thought this was about winning and losing, about who could hurt whom the most. They were wrong. This was about justice. This was about consequences. This was about showing the world who Alma Fallon really was beneath her perfect facade. And I was just getting started. 3 days later, the first shot was fired in what the local newspaper would eventually call the Pinegate War. It came in the form of a TikTok video posted by my own daughter. Day 3 of living with my psycho dad, Daisy said into her phone camera, sitting in what looked like Miles's condo. He's literally lost his mind. Mom can't even get into her own house. The video had been viewed 12,000 times in 2 hours. The comments were brutal. Your dad sounds like a controlling freak. Call the police. This is abuse. I watched it 3 times before calling Rico. We need to accelerate the timeline. How accelerated? Today. While Rico made his preparations, I drove to Alma's law firm. The building was all glass and steel, designed to intimidate clients and impress judges. I'd been there exactly once before, for their Christmas party last year. Alma had introduced me to her colleagues as my husband, like I was an accessory she'd picked up at the mall. The receptionist recognized me. Mr. Fallon, how nice to see you. Are you here for Alma? Actually, I was hoping to speak with Mr. Patterson. James Patterson was the senior partner, a man who valued reputation above everything else. He was also Mrs. Patterson's nephew, which made him practically family in Pinegate terms. I'm afraid he's in a meeting. Tell him it's about the hotel security footage. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in Patterson's corner office, watching him review the contents of Rico's flash drive. "This is very disappointing," he said finally. "I thought you should know before it becomes public knowledge." "Public knowledge?" I leaned forward. "Mr. Patterson, my wife abandoned me on a highway in the middle of the night. She's living with her lover and using your firm's resources to harass me. How long do you think it'll take for that story to reach the local media?" Patterson was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want?" "Nothing. I just thought you deserved to know what kind of person you're employing." I left the flash drive on his desk and walked out. By the time I reached my car, my phone was buzzing with angry texts from Alma. "What did you do? James wants to see me, now. You're going to regret this." But I was already moving on to phase 2. Rico met me at the bank, where we'd arranged a meeting with the manager. Alma had been hiding debts, using credit cards I didn't know about, borrowing against our joint accounts without my knowledge. "I want to protect my assets," I told the manager. "My wife has been making unauthorized transactions." The documentation was overwhelming. Alma had been living beyond our means for months, funding her affair with money she didn't have. The bank manager, a practical man who'd seen this kind of thing before, was happy to help me secure my accounts. "What about the joint credit cards?" "Canceled as of this morning." By afternoon, Alma's financial world was collapsing. Her personal credit cards were maxed out, her access to our joint accounts was blocked, and her employer was asking very uncomfortable questions about her professional conduct. That's when Ava Sterling made her move. It started with a Facebook post in the Pine Gate community group, a gathering place for local gossip and neighborhood complaints. "I'm deeply concerned about a situation involving domestic abuse in our community," Ava wrote. "A woman I know is being financially terrorized by her husband, who has cut off her access to money, locked her out of her home, and is using their child as a weapon. This kind of behavior is unacceptable and potentially dangerous. We need to support victims of abuse, not enable their abusers." The post didn't mention names, but it didn't need to. Everyone in Pinegate knew exactly who she was talking about. Within an hour, there were 50 comments. Most were supportive of the victim, expressing outrage at the abusive husband. A few people asked for more details. One or two suggested calling the police. Then Mrs. Patterson weighed in. "I think there's more to this story than we're hearing," she wrote. "I saw the woman in question trying to break into a house that doesn't belong to her. I also saw her abandon her husband on a public street in the middle of the night. Maybe we should get all the facts before we start throwing accusations around." The comment thread exploded. Team Alma versus Team Cedric fighting it out in the digital town square. It was better than reality TV and twice as vicious. I was reading through the comments when Rico called. "Boss, we got a problem. Someone's been asking questions about your business." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggests they're looking for dirt, financial irregularities, unhappy clients, anything that might make you look bad." Ava was thorough. I had to give her that. If she couldn't destroy me with the abuse narrative, she'd try to ruin my professional reputation instead. "Any luck tracing her activities?" "Some. She's been busy. Phone calls to reporters, meetings with your competitors, even reached out to some of your former employees." "Which employees?" "Jake Morrison, for one." Jake Morrison. I'd fired him 6 months ago for showing up to work intoxicated. He'd been bitter about it ever since, the kind of man who held grudges like other people held jobs. "What did he tell her?" "Nothing good, I'm guessing. They met for 2 hours at that coffee shop downtown." This was escalating faster than I'd expected. Ava wasn't just defending Alma. She was going on the offensive, trying to destroy me before I could destroy them. Time to show her what a real offensive looked like. "Rico, remember that background check we ran on Ava last year? When she was trying to get that city contract?" "That's the one. How much of it was public record?" Rico's smile was predatory. "Not much, but it could be." Ava Sterling had secrets. Everyone did, but hers were particularly interesting. A bankruptcy 7 years ago that she'd managed to keep quiet. A restraining order from an ex-boyfriend who claimed she'd stalked him. A pattern of job hopping that suggested she'd burned bridges everywhere she'd worked. Most interesting of all was her connection to a public relations scandal in Atlanta, where she'd been accused of planting false stories about a client's competitor. The charges had been dropped, but the damage to her reputation had been significant. Significant enough to drive her out of Atlanta and into the smaller pond of Pinegate, where she could rebuild her image and start fresh. "How do you want to play this?" Rico asked. "Carefully. We don't want to look like we're attacking an innocent woman. Even though she's attacking you? Especially because she's attacking me. Let her overplay her hand first." I didn't have to wait long. That evening, Daisy posted another TikTok video, this one more vicious than the first. "Update on my psycho dad situation," she said, sitting in what was clearly Alma's new apartment. "He's now trying to destroy my mom's career because he can't handle being left. Classic narcissist behavior. Mom says he's always been controlling, but it's gotten worse since she started succeeding without him." This video got 20,000 views in the first hour. The comments were even more brutal than before. "Your mom needs to get a restraining order. Document everything for the divorce proceedings. Stay safe, girl. Men like your dad can be dangerous." Dangerous. That was the word Ava wanted people to associate with me. Dangerous, controlling, abusive. The kind of man who might escalate from financial abuse to something worse. It was a clever strategy. Paint me as the aggressor, make Alma the victim, and wait for public opinion to do the rest. In a small town like Pinegate, reputation was everything. Once people decided you were the bad guy, it was almost impossible to change their minds. Almost. I called my lawyer, Patricia Williams. "I need you to file a defamation suit." "Against whom?" "Ava Sterling. She's been spreading false information about me on social media." "What kind of false information?" I read her some of the Facebook comments, the implications of abuse and financial terrorism. Patricia listened without interrupting. "It's actionable," she said finally. "But it'll be expensive and time-consuming. Are you sure you want to go that route?" "I'm sure, but I want to do something else first." "What's that?" "I want to hold a press conference." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "A press conference?" "Tomorrow morning, in front of my house. I want to tell my side of the story before Ava's version becomes the official truth." "Cedric, I have to advise against this. Anything you say can be used against you in divorce proceedings." "Let them try. I'm tired of being painted as the villain." I spent that night preparing my statement. Not a defense. Defenses made you look guilty. Instead, I crafted an offense, a detailed account of Alma's affair, her financial deceptions, her abandonment of me on the highway. I had documentation for everything, evidence that couldn't be disputed or spun. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. in my front yard. I expected maybe a reporter from the local newspaper, possibly someone from the radio station. I got a lot more than that. By 9:30, there were news vans from 3 different TV stations parked on my street. Neighbors lined the sidewalks like it was a parade. Someone had set up a folding chair and was selling coffee from a thermos. Pinegate had never seen anything like it. At exactly 10 o'clock, I stepped onto my front porch and looked out at the crowd. Reporters with cameras, neighbors with phones, curious onlookers who'd heard about the drama and wanted to see it firsthand. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Cedric Fallon, and I want to tell you a story about marriage, betrayal, and the difference between justice and revenge." For the next 20 minutes, I laid out the facts. Alma's affair with Miles Roark, her financial deceptions, her decision to abandon me on a dark highway in the middle of a rainstorm. I showed photographs, bank statements, hotel receipts. I played the audio recording of her threatening me on the phone. Most importantly, I played the security camera footage from the night she'd tried to break into my house. "This is not a man terrorizing his wife," I said as the crowd watched Alma pound on my door. "This is a woman who thought she could have her cake and eat it too, who thought she could betray her marriage, steal from our joint accounts, and still claim the moral high ground. The reporters were scribbling furiously. The neighbors were nodding in agreement. Even Mrs. Patterson was applauding. "I'm not the victim here," I continued. "I'm just a man who got tired of being played for a fool. My wife made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences." The questions came fast and aggressive. "What about your daughter's claims that you're being controlling?" "My daughter is 14 years old and upset that her parents are getting divorced. She's been influenced by people who want to paint me as the villain. I don't blame her for that." "Are you seeking revenge against your wife?" "I'm seeking justice. There's a difference. What's your response to allegations that you're financially abusing your wife?" "I'm protecting assets that I earned from a woman who was stealing from our joint accounts to fund her affair. If that's financial abuse, then every divorce lawyer in America is an enabler." The crowd laughed at that one. I was winning them over, turning the narrative back in my favor. That's when Alma arrived. Her car, a rental since her BMW was still impounded, screeched to a stop at the curb. She got out looking like she'd been through a hurricane. Her perfect composure finally cracked. "You son of a—" she started, then caught herself as she noticed the cameras. "This is harassment, pure and simple." "Ma'am," called out one of the reporters, "do you have a response to the evidence your husband has presented?" "Evidence? This is a vindictive man trying to destroy me because I had the courage to leave him." "What about the hotel security footage?" "What about it? I'm a grown woman. I can spend time with whomever I choose." "Even while you're married?" Alma's face went red. "That's between me and my husband." "Actually," I said from the porch, "it's between you and the divorce court now." She spun around to face me. "You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you've won?" "I think I've told the truth. People can make their own judgments." "The truth?" Alma laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want the truth? The truth is, you're a small-minded, petty man who can't stand the fact that I outgrew you. The truth is, you've been holding me back for years, trying to keep me trapped in this pathetic little town with your pathetic little life." The crowd was silent now. Even the reporters had stopped writing. "The truth is, I should have left you years ago, but I felt sorry for you. Poor Cedric, with his little security business and his big dreams that never amounted to anything. I stayed out of pity, and this is how you repay me?" It was exactly what I'd been hoping for. Alma's mask had finally slipped, revealing the contempt she'd been hiding for years. The cameras caught every word, every sneer, every moment of her meltdown. "Are you finished?" I asked quietly. "I'm just getting started." "Good, because so am I." I pulled out my phone and played one more recording. Alma's voice clear as day. "You needed a lesson, Cedric. Maybe now you'll understand your place." The crowd gasped. This was the voice of the woman claiming to be a victim of abuse, talking about putting her husband in his place. "This was recorded 3 nights ago," I said, "moments before my wife and her lover abandoned me 87 miles from home in the middle of a rainstorm." Alma's face went white. "You recorded me?" "I record everything now. I've learned not to trust you." She looked around at the crowd, at the cameras, at the neighbors who'd once respected her. Her carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time. "This isn't over," she said finally. "No," I agreed. "It's not." She got back in her rental car and drove off, tires squealing. The reporters immediately started calling out more questions, but I held up my hand. "That's all for today. Thank you for your time." As the crowd dispersed, Rico appeared at my elbow. "How do you think it went?" "Better than expected. Alma just gave us enough material for the next phase." "Which is?" I looked at the news vans pulling away, already rushing to get their stories on the air. By tonight, everyone in a 50-mile radius would know exactly what kind of person Alma Fallon really was. "Now we go after Ava." The video went viral overnight, not just locally, nationally. Cheating wife's epic meltdown had 3 million views by morning, with comments pouring in from around the world. She's absolutely toxic. This man is a hero for exposing her. The audacity of this woman is unbelievable. But the most interesting comment came from someone with inside knowledge. I used to work with Ava Sterling in Atlanta. This is exactly the kind of thing she specializes in, destroying people's reputations. Looks like she met her match. That comment led me down a rabbit hole of research that kept me up until 3 a.m. Ava Sterling wasn't just Alma's friend and fixer. She was a professional reputation assassin, with a trail of destroyed lives stretching back over a decade. The pattern was always the same. Ava would identify a target, usually someone who'd crossed her or her clients. She'd spend weeks gathering intelligence, finding weaknesses, building a network of allies. Then she'd launch a coordinated attack designed to destroy her target's reputation, relationships, and livelihood. She'd done it to business rivals in Atlanta, to a former boyfriend who'd broken up with her, to a journalist who'd written unflattering articles about her clients. Each time, she'd managed to stay in the shadows while her targets were destroyed in the light. But this time was different. This time, she'd made it personal. I was reviewing her history when Rico called at 6 a.m. "Boss, we got movement. Big movement." "What kind of movement?" "Ava just rented a conference room at the Pine Gate Community Center. She's calling it a domestic violence awareness meeting." I sat up in bed. "When?" "Tonight, 7 p.m. She's been making calls all morning, reaching out to women's groups, church organizations, anyone who might be sympathetic to the cause." It was a brilliant move. Ava was doubling down on the abuse narrative, using the viral video as proof that I was dangerous and unstable. She'd gather a room full of concerned citizens, paint herself as an advocate for victims, and position me as a threat to the community. How many people is she expecting? Hard to say, but she's been busy, real busy. I got dressed and drove to the community center. The parking lot was already buzzing with activity. Volunteers were setting up signs. "Support survivors. Break the silence. Domestic violence awareness." Ava was in the middle of it all, directing traffic like a general commanding troops. She looked confident, energized, like someone who knew she was about to win a major victory. She had no idea what was coming. I parked across the street and called Patricia Williams. "I need you to attend a meeting tonight." "What kind of meeting?" I explained Ava's plan. Patricia listened without interrupting, then sighed. "Cedric, this could backfire spectacularly. If you show up at a domestic violence awareness meeting, you'll look like you're intimidating victims." "I'm not going to show up. You are, as my legal representative." "To do what?" "To present evidence." "What kind of evidence?" I smiled. "The kind that shows exactly who Ava Sterling really is." The rest of the day was spent in preparation. Rico and I gathered everything we'd collected on Ava over the years: background checks, financial records, legal documents, employment history. We contacted her former colleagues in Atlanta, her ex-boyfriends, anyone who'd had dealings with her. The picture that emerged was ugly. Ava Sterling was a predator who specialized in destroying innocent people. She'd ruined careers, broken up families, and driven at least 2 people to nervous breakdowns. All in the name of reputation management. Most damning of all was a recorded phone conversation from her Atlanta days, where she'd bragged about destroying a business rival by spreading false rumors about domestic abuse. "The beauty of the abuse angle," Ava had said on the recording, "is that once people hear it, they stop thinking critically. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. The accusation is enough." By 6 p.m., we had everything we needed. Patricia Williams arrived at my house with a team of paralegals and enough documentation to fill a briefcase. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The community center was packed by 7 o'clock. I watched from across the street as people filed in: church ladies, social workers, concerned neighbors, local activists. Ava had done her job well. She'd assembled an army of good intentions, ready to fight against domestic violence. Too bad they didn't know they were being manipulated by someone who'd made a career of destroying innocent people. Patricia entered the building at exactly 7:15, after Ava had finished her opening remarks. I could see the meeting through the windows, Ava at the podium, gesturing dramatically as she described the pattern of abuse she'd witnessed. Then, Patricia stood up. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "I'm Patricia Williams, representing Cedric Fallon. I'd like to present some information that's relevant to tonight's discussion." The room went quiet. Ava's face went pale. "This is highly inappropriate," Ava said. "This is a safe space for victims." "I agree," Patricia replied, "which is why I think everyone should know who they're really dealing with." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Ava Sterling, the woman who organized tonight's meeting, has a documented history of making false accusations of domestic abuse. She's used these accusations to destroy innocent people's lives and careers." The room erupted. People were shouting, demanding explanations, asking questions. Ava was trying to regain control, but Patricia wasn't finished. "In Atlanta, Ms. Sterling destroyed a man named Robert Chen by spreading false rumors that he'd abused his ex-wife. Mr. Chen lost his job, his home, and his relationship with his children. The accusations were later proven false, but the damage was done." Patricia held up a photograph. "This is Mr. Chen today. He's homeless, unemployed, and hasn't seen his children in 3 years, all because Ava Sterling decided he needed to be destroyed." The room was silent now. Everyone was staring at Ava, who looked like she wanted to disappear. She did the same thing to a journalist named Maria Rodriguez, to a business owner named Thomas Wilson, and to at least 6 other people that we know of. Her method is always the same: identify a target, gather intelligence, then launch a coordinated campaign of character assassination. Patricia pulled out another document. "This is a recorded phone conversation where Ms. Sterling discusses her methods. I think you should hear it." Ava's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "The beauty of the abuse angle is that once people hear it, they stop thinking critically. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. The accusation is enough." The reaction was immediate and explosive. People were shouting at Ava, demanding explanations, calling her a fraud. Several women got up and walked out, disgusted at being manipulated. "Ladies and gentlemen," Patricia said, raising her voice over the chaos, "you came here tonight because you care about domestic violence. You want to help real victims, but you're being used by someone who makes a living destroying innocent people." She held up one final document. "This is a restraining order filed against Ava Sterling by her ex-boyfriend, David Martinez. He accused her of stalking, harassment, and making false accusations of abuse when he tried to break up with her." The room was in complete chaos now. Ava was trying to speak, but no one was listening. People were demanding answers, calling her names, some even threatening to call the police. That's when Ava made her biggest mistake. "You don't understand," she screamed, her composure finally cracking. "Cedric Fallon destroyed my life. He cost me everything." The room went quiet. This was the first time anyone had heard about a personal connection between Ava and me. 3 years ago, I applied for a security contract with his company. I was qualified, I was the best candidate, but he rejected me because of my past. He ruined my reputation in this town before I even had a chance. Patricia smiled. "So this isn't about domestic violence at all. This is about revenge. He had no right to judge me, no right to keep me from starting over." The crowd was turning now. They'd come to support a victim of domestic violence, but instead, they'd found a woman seeking personal revenge through false accusations. "I worked hard to build a new life here," Ava continued, tears streaming down her face. "But he wouldn't let me forget my mistakes. He made sure everyone knew about Atlanta, about the restraining order, about everything I was trying to leave behind." "So you decided to destroy him the same way you've destroyed others," Patricia said. "He deserved it. They all deserved it." And there it was. The confession everyone needed to hear. Ava Sterling, the woman who'd been painting me as an abuser, had just admitted to orchestrating the entire campaign against me out of personal revenge. The meeting dissolved into chaos. People were leaving in droves, disgusted and angry at being manipulated. Ava was left standing at the podium, tears streaming down her face, her carefully constructed plan in ruins. Patricia packed up her briefcase and walked out, her job done. The crowd followed, leaving Ava alone in the empty community center. I watched from across the street as the lights went out and Ava emerged, looking broken and defeated. She'd played her best hand and lost everything, but I wasn't done with her yet. My phone rang as I drove home. It was Alma. "You destroyed her," she said without preamble. "She destroyed herself. I just gave people the information they needed to make an informed decision. Ava was trying to help me. Ava was using you to get revenge against me. You were just a convenient weapon." There was silence on the other end. Then, "I didn't know about Atlanta. There's a lot you don't know about your friends, Alma. Maybe you should choose them more carefully. This doesn't change anything between us." "You're right. It doesn't. You're still the woman who cheated on me, stole from our joint accounts, and abandoned me on a dark highway. Ava's just the woman who tried to help you get away with it." I hung up and drove home through the quiet streets of Pinegate. The town felt different now, like a fever had broken. Ava's influence was gone, her network of allies scattered, her reputation destroyed. But the war wasn't over. Alma was still out there, still fighting, still convinced she could win. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The annual Pinegate Community Festival was supposed to be a celebration. Local businesses set up booths, families brought picnics, children ran through the park while their parents socialized and gossiped. It was the kind of wholesome small-town event that brought everyone together. This year, it was going to be something else entirely. I arrived early, before the crowds, to set up my own booth. Officially, I was representing Fallon Security Services, offering information about home security systems and personal protection. Unofficially, I was preparing for the final act of my war with Alma. Rico helped me arrange the display: brochures, business cards, a small TV monitor that would loop promotional videos. Everything looked professional and innocent. "You sure about this, boss?" Rico asked as we tested the sound system. "I've never been more sure of anything." The festival opened at 10 a.m. By noon, the park was packed with families, couples, groups of friends enjoying the sunshine and festivities. I watched them from my booth, recognizing faces, noting who was talking to whom, tracking the social dynamics that made small towns tick. Alma arrived at 12:30, accompanied by Miles and looking like she was attending a funeral. She'd lost weight since our confrontation, her face drawn and tired. The stress was showing. She set up her own informal campaign at a picnic table near the bandstand. Not an official booth. She couldn't afford one now that her finances were frozen, but a gathering point for her remaining supporters. There weren't many of them left. Daisy was there too, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact with anyone. The viral videos had made her a minor celebrity at school, but not the kind she'd wanted to be. Her classmates were asking uncomfortable questions about her mother's behavior. At exactly 1 o'clock, I walked to the bandstand and asked to borrow the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying across the park, "I'd like to take a few minutes of your time to tell you a story." The crowd gathered around, curious and expectant. Word had spread about the drama surrounding the Fallon family, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next. 6 months ago, I thought I had a good marriage, a successful wife, a loving daughter, a comfortable life in a town I'd grown to love. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was especially wrong about the people I trusted most. I could see Alma pushing through the crowd, her face flushed with anger. Miles was right behind her, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. My wife was having an affair. Not just any affair, a calculated, deliberate betrayal that involved stealing money from our joint accounts, lying to our daughter, and conspiring with friends to destroy my reputation when I found out about it. "That's enough!" Alma shouted from the crowd. "This is harassment!" "This is truth," I replied calmly. "Something you've had trouble with lately." The crowd was riveted. This was better than any soap opera, and it was happening right in front of them. 3 weeks ago, my wife and her lover drove me 87 miles out of town and abandoned me on a dark highway in the middle of a rainstorm. They took my phone, my wallet, everything except the clothes on my back. Why? Because I had the audacity to confront them about their affair. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the sound system. "I'd like you to hear something." Alma's voice filled the park. "You needed a lesson, Cedric. Maybe now you'll understand your place." The crowd gasped. This was the voice of a woman who'd been claiming to be a victim of abuse, talking about putting her husband in his place. "That was recorded moments before I was abandoned on the highway," I said. "Does that sound like the voice of an abuse victim to you?" Alma was pushing harder now, trying to reach the bandstand. "Stop this! You're embarrassing Daisy." "I'm embarrassing Daisy?" I laughed. "You mean more than when you made her an accessory to adultery? More than when you coached her to lie on social media? More than when you used her as a weapon against her own father?" Daisy was crying now, finally understanding how she'd been manipulated. Several of her friends had their phones out, recording everything. "But the real story," I continued, "isn't about my wife's affair. It's about the woman who orchestrated this entire campaign against me. A woman named Ava Sterling, who makes a living destroying innocent people." I played the recording of Ava discussing her methods, her voice clear and damning. The beauty of the abuse angle is that once people hear it, they stop thinking critically. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. The accusation is enough. The crowd was getting angry now. They'd been manipulated, used as weapons in someone else's personal war. Small-town people didn't like being played for fools. Ava Sterling targeted me because I refused to give her a security contract 3 years ago. She'd been run out of Atlanta for destroying innocent people's lives, and I wouldn't help her start over here, so she decided to destroy me instead. Miles finally reached the edge of the crowd. "This is insane," he shouted. "You're having a public breakdown." "Am I?" I smiled. "Let me show you what a breakdown really looks like." I nodded to Rico, who activated the TV monitor at my booth. The screen filled with security camera footage from Miles's condo building, Miles and Alma entering together, Miles and Alma leaving together. Hours of footage documenting their affair, but that wasn't the most damaging part. The monitor switched to financial records, bank statements showing the money Alma had stolen from our joint accounts, credit card bills for expensive hotels and restaurants, a paper trail of her deception stretching back months. "My wife stole over $40,000 from our joint accounts to fund her affair," I announced. "Money that was supposed to pay for our daughter's college education." Daisy's sobs got louder. She was finally understanding the full scope of her mother's betrayal. The monitor switched again, this time showing legal documents. "Yesterday, I filed for divorce. I'm asking for full custody of my daughter based on my wife's financial crimes and her pattern of using Daisy as a weapon in our marriage." Alma finally broke through the crowd and rushed the bandstand. "You can't do this to me." "I'm not doing anything to you," I said calmly. "I'm just telling the truth." She lunged at me, her composure finally cracking completely. Rico intercepted her before she could reach me, holding her back as she screamed and struggled. "You've destroyed everything," she yelled. "My career, my reputation, my relationship with my daughter." "You destroyed those things yourself. I just made sure people knew about it." The crowd was backing away now, shocked by Alma's meltdown. This was the woman who'd been claiming to be a victim, showing her true colors in front of the entire town. Miles tried to help her, but she turned on him too. This is your fault. If you hadn't been so careless with the hotel receipts, none of this would have happened." "My fault?" Miles looked stunned. "You're the one who said you could handle your husband." "Handle him? I tried to destroy him, but he was too smart for us." And there it was, the final confession, recorded by dozens of phones, witnessed by hundreds of people. Alma admitting that she'd tried to destroy me, that everything I'd accused her of was true. The crowd was silent now. Even Daisy had stopped crying, shocked by her mother's words. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, "I present to you the real Alma Fallon, not a victim of domestic abuse, but a woman who tried to destroy her husband's life when he discovered her affair." I disconnected my phone and stepped down from the bandstand. The crowd parted as I walked through them, heading back to my booth. "Where are you going?" Alma screamed after me. "We're not finished." I turned back to look at her. She was disheveled, mascara running down her cheeks, her perfect facade completely destroyed. "Yes, we are," I said quietly. "We're finished." Rico and I packed up our booth in silence while the crowd slowly dispersed. People were talking in hushed tones, processing what they'd just witnessed. Some were taking pictures of Alma, who was still standing by the bandstand, looking lost and broken. Miles had disappeared, probably realizing that his association with Alma was going to cost him dearly. Daisy was being comforted by some of her friends, finally free from her mother's manipulation. "What now, boss?" Rico asked, as we loaded the last of our equipment into his truck. "Now we go home. It's over." "You sure about that?" I looked back at the park, where Alma was finally walking away, alone and defeated. Her war against me had cost her everything: her job, her reputation, her relationship with our daughter, her standing in the community. I'm sure. We drove home through the quiet streets of Pine Gate. The town felt different now, like a storm had passed and left the air clean and fresh. People were already talking about what they'd witnessed, spreading the story to friends and neighbors who'd missed the show. By evening, everyone in a 50-mile radius would know the truth about Alma Fallon and her campaign of deception. I parked in my driveway and sat for a moment, looking at my house. It felt like home again, like a place where I could build a new life. The war was over, and I'd won not through violence or cruelty, but through patience, planning, and the simple power of truth. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but this isn't over. A." I deleted the message without responding. Alma could threaten all she wanted, but she had no weapons left. No money, no allies, no credibility. She was finished. Rico walked me to the front door. "Need anything else tonight?" "Just some peace and quiet." He nodded and drove away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I went inside and poured myself a drink, then stepped onto my back deck to watch the sunset. Somewhere out there, Alma was probably planning her next move, still convinced she could somehow turn this around. But she was fighting a war that was already over, raging against consequences she'd brought on herself. I'd given her every opportunity to end this quietly, to accept responsibility for her actions and move on with dignity. Instead, she'd chosen to escalate, to attack, to try to destroy me rather than face the truth about what she'd done. Now she was facing the consequences of that choice. The sun disappeared behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. A new day was coming, and with it, a new chapter in my life. The war was over, the truth was known, and justice had been served. I raised my glass to the darkening sky and smiled. They'd called me the villain. I'd worn the title better than they'd ever worn their masks.